Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 78. I'm your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If you can't do it, nobody can. And sorry about that. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels all over the world, the universe, the continents, and maybe even extraterrestrial vessels out there. Well, you never know. Welcome to the podcast today, folks. Good to have you. And this is episode 78. We're going to close in on 100 later this year, which is pretty cool. I'm sitting at my lunchtime recording spot, actually one of my two lunchtime recording spots, and this is my vehicle in front of the Starbucks parking lot off the Cook Road exit in Burlington, Washington. You could probably Google that and see me on Google Earth sitting in my truck right now, which is pretty crazy. So you may hear a little background noise, I don't know, but that's okay. Background noise is good. Today's featured segment is a couple things I did with Pygmy Kayaks. A few weeks ago, they had a class, a one-week class where they took, I think there was maybe 6 or 8 students, and helped them get about 70% done each building a kayak from one of Pygmy's kits. And so I interviewed Tom and Cynthia Krabeel, hope I pronounced that correctly, who are from Juneau, Alaska, if I remember correctly. I know it's Alaska, I'm pretty sure it's Juneau. And they actually flew down, took a vacation over, it was over Valentine's Day, and built a boat. After that, I talked to John Lockwood, the owner of Pygmy Kayaks, and we started talking about the class, and then we got off on other topics of interest. John's kind of a technical guy, and so we typically start talking about paddles and waveforms and hull length and hull speed and fun stuff like that, which is really fun to do with John because he knows so much about that kind of stuff. So there's 2 segments to the interview today, so stick around, you're going to like it. Well, this is a podcast to get folks in the game, that is the wooden boat game. If you're not already in, it's time you get in. It's not a huge investment to get in. In fact, you can get in for free if you want. Just go to a wooden boat festival. Maybe that costs you $7.50 for the day, I don't know. Or pick up a wooden boat magazine at the newsstand. Or go online to Wooden Boat Magazine or Hooked on Wooden Boats. Go build a wooden boat from a kit or borrow a wooden boat. Or go to the Center for Wooden Boats in Seattle and rent a wooden rowboat and row around. The idea as you get here is to get in the wooden boat game. And lots of ways to do it. So go for it and tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it. Dan at hookedonwoodenboats.com is a great place to find me. Okay, this past week, my wife and I moved into our new home. It's not a new home, a new used home, or used new home. No, it's not used new. A new used home. It's a new home to us anyway. And it's got a 3-car garage. It took us pretty much all week to move our stuff. It was a major thing. We hadn't moved for 15 years. So we dumped a bunch of stuff in the 3-car garage into 2 bays because the owners had stuff there still. Now they've got their stuff moved out, so I can start putting my shop back together. Once I do that, I'll start working on my canoe again, which is basically just varnishing the inside. So I didn't get a whole lot done in the wooden boat world, but I am excited. I've got some ideas for my new shop. It's going to be smaller than it was, but I'm pretty excited because I think I'm going to make it more efficient. I might even downsize from my Delta Unisaw table saw to a portable table saw or a contractor's table saw. The Delta Unisaw is more of a cabinet shop saw, and I'm not really building cabinets, although it's great to be able to, rip down a two-by piece of oak without the thing even breathing hard. But we'll see about that. I've got a huge outfeed table I built for it, so the whole thing with the outfeed table is like, 7 feet wide and 6 feet deep or something like that. So it takes a lot of space, which in a 2-car garage area might be a little bit too much. So anyway, I'm working on that. So I'm excited to be in the new place and get set up there and get working on the canoe, and then hopefully get going on a scamp shortly thereafter. Speaking of which, this week and last week has been the scamp camp in Port Townsend. I think it's maybe the 3rd or 4th camp that they've done. And I'm going to head over there Friday and do some interviews and have some fun with that. So that should be pretty cool. Which brings us to Wooden Boat Hack of the Week number 18. And this hack is to confer with others before starting your first wooden boat building project. It only makes sense to get tips, tricks, advice, and ideas from other people that have been in the game if you haven't. There's a bunch of ways to do this. There's online forums where you can talk about wooden boats. One of the most popular out there is on Wooden Boat Magazine's website. If you go to their forum, you can register and sign up, and then you can start a conversation with people about what you should build. There's other online forums for that type of thing. You can look for local boat builders, and the professionals are going to have a little bit different spin on things than the hobbyists, but you might also find some hobbyists in your area. You could talk to a wooden boat kit company. There are several in the U.S. and other parts of the world, actually, and if you Google wooden boat kits, you'll get several names up there, or if you look in the back of Wooden Boat Magazine, you'll get some ideas there. And they're great about talking. If you just call them or email them, they'll be great. The ones I've dealt with are really good about talking to you and giving you ideas. Of course, they're going to tell you about your kits, which isn't a bad way to go, especially for a first-time builder. So you could do that. You could check out some wooden boat festivals in your area. Again, you can Google those, or wooden boat schools or community colleges, that sort of thing, educational places for wooden boats. Again, go on the internet. So yeah, I would just encourage you to get out and talk to some people locally if you can. Maybe even travel a little ways to talk. Do some internet research and kind of narrow down your first project. It'll probably really help you get some ideas, because some types of construction are more complicated than others. Building a lapstrake boat or a Carvel plank boat is going to be more difficult than building a stitch and glue boat or a hard-chined plywood boat. So check it out and let me know how it goes. Give a shout out to a new subscriber this week, Terry Wood. Terry, thanks for subscribing to my e-newsletter, which is a almost monthly email newsletter that I send out to subscribers. If you would like to subscribe to that and you haven't already done so, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your email and your name, and we'll get you set up for that. Okay, we're going to move on to the interviews. We're going to start with Tom and Cynthia from Juneau, Alaska, and right after that interview is done, we're going to go directly into the interview with John Lockwood, and I hope you enjoy it. So take it away, Tom and Cynthia. Okay, it's February 15th, 2013. I am sitting with Tom and Cynthia in Port Townsend, Washington. Notice I didn't try to pronounce your last name.
Yeah, don't go there.
Tom and Cynthia are attending a Pygmy Kayak Build Your Own Kayak class this week. It's a 6-day class, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we're in day 5, and I dropped by to kind of talk to you guys about what's going on. So first of all, tell me where you're from.
We're from Juneau, Alaska.
Juneau, Alaska, okay. And have you ever built a boat before?
I built a 14-foot sailboat in college, early college.
Wooden boat or?
Yes.
Okay.
It was plywood.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've never had experience. Didn't even know you could build a boat.
Really?
Hadn't
Okay.
even
So first time for
considered it.
that. So how did you hear about Pygmy?
We were trying to remember it the other day. John asked me, and I think it was through like Kayaker magazine, and they had a deal where they were giving the boat away if you signed up for the newsletter.
Okay.
And then a newsletter came saying that they were having the boat building class. And it's my 50th birthday this month, and so I thought this would be a fun way to celebrate that.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
I was secretly thinking maybe we'd take a class in Italy. I was sort of pushing
really?
in that direction, but when Tom mentioned this, I said, yes, absolutely. And Port Townsend, of course, is such a great location.
Right. So you're spending the week down here,
Yes.
huh? Kind of hard to commute to Juneau from here.
True. No.
So have you guys kayaked before?
I have.
She's got a lot more experience than I do.
Oh, really?
Got very, very little.
Okay.
Yeah.
In wooden kayaks or fiberglass?
Fiberglass.
Fiberglass. Okay. So, so why are you guys taking this class?
Because it's my birthday.
Okay.
And would it ever get done if we bought the kit and we put it in our garage? And probably not.
And
it's great motivation.
Yeah, the experience of having an instructor teach you the shortcuts and save you the mistakes is another reason.
It's just too frustrating. Have to go back, redo your work.
I mean, there's a manual, but to open it up and just stare at it, it's nice to have somebody say, okay, this is what we're doing, and line you out.
So did you know anybody before this that had a wood kayak up in your area that really liked it, or?
I do.
I talked to a photographer at a show one time, and she had a beautiful picture of a loon, and I've been trying to get a picture of a loon, and I said, I can never get close enough. And she said, get a wood boat. She said those metal ones, the metal canoes and stuff, they're just too noisy. So that's kind of another reason is they're quiet. They absorb a lot of the sound.
Yeah. So this will be your first wood kayak then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so, had you heard much about Pygmy kayaks, or just kind of read about it, or?
I think that was the first time when I saw the ad and then signed up for the newsletter. Then I started browsing their website.
So when you're done with the class, how much will be done on the boat? What stage will the construction be at?
He said 50%.
Yeah, it's roughly halfway.
Halfway. So what will be left to do then? Will the boat be basically in one piece, everything assembled, or?
Yeah, it'll be a shell pretty much. The inside will be glassed, but the outside won't. And
let's pause it for just a second here.
That's a good idea.
Okay, we're back. The plane has gone over. So we were talking about how far finished the boat is when you leave and what's left to do.
Yeah, the entire interior will be glassed. The exterior won't be fiberglassed over. The hatch, if you buy the hatch option, they won't be installed. You do that yourself. And what do you call it? Where the spray skirt attaches?
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what it's called exactly.
Either.
But anyway,
We can visualize
it's
it.
the hoop. It's
round
not
thing.
called a hoop, but yeah,
Right.
I know what you mean.
yeah, that won't be on.
Okay.
And if you get a rudder, that won't be on. None of the options will be on.
Yeah. Okay. Are you going to put what do you call
Bulkheads.
the so you can access the bulkheads,
The deck hatches?
the deck hatches?
Yeah.
You guys going to put those on?
Yeah, we'll definitely put those on.
Are those out of wood too?
Yeah, you just cut a hole in the deck and then put a little shelf in there to hold it.
Okay.
A little gasket.
We looked at a finished model and it looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And then which model again are you building?
Pinguino.
The Pinguino 14.5 foot,
Yeah.
which is kind of a recreational boat. It's not like a racing kayak, but it's still pretty fast from what I've heard.
Yeah.
And lightweight.
Yeah, and lightweight. How much
That's a
will the boat
plus.
weigh when it's done?
About 40 pounds.
Really? Okay. That's pretty light for a 15-foot boat.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Carrying the pieces around in the shop when you're working on it.
Yeah, the
Really?
plywood's light. Is it?
It
Is it
is. You
4
just
millimeter
kinda-
plywood?
I believe so.
Yeah. It's like 1/4 inch or 3/16 or something.
Yeah, right in between there, I think.
Yeah.
3-ply, beautiful wood.
What's that?
Yeah.
Beautiful wood.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice grain to it. And
Yeah.
That's-
Is it a Kumi plywood?
Yes.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Very cool. So you guys are learning some woodworking skills, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
boy,
yeah.
are we ever.
It's pre-cut, so there's little cutting,
Mm-hmm.
just some fitting and fiberglassing.
Mm-hmm.
It goes pretty fast.
Yeah. So how many hours do you anticipate to finish the boat once you get it home?
I can't remember if they said anything about it. Did John say something about 100 hours?
I heard someone say that.
Yeah, heard something about 100 hours. Because you fiberglass it over, and then you're going to be sanding that, and then you're going to be varnishing. And so it depends how many coats of varnish you want.
I see.
And how nice you want it.
Yeah.
True.
The finishing can take a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of detail work definitely can consume some hours.
We both tend to be pretty detailed, though, so we'll probably take it slow. And
Make it look really nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was teasing Tom and said, "You're not really going to put her in the water, are you? After all this, maybe we should just put her in the living room, hang it on the wall."
Yeah, really.
Yeah, they're beautiful
They
boats.
are beautiful.
Yeah.
And the new construction style of using duct tape instead of the wire
Oh, that's
for a lot of
Yeah.
the seams, you don't have that.
You don't have all
those
the
little dots.
Right. So how does that work? Because I've built a couple stitch and glue boats myself, and I've used the wire. So do you only use the wire at the pressure points? Is that the idea?
Right.
Exactly.
And the other stuff that doesn't take as much to hold it together, you use the Gorilla tape. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Cut it
you-
into thirds, so it's not really wide.
Yeah.
half-inch wide strips, 3/4 or something. And
Wow.
it grips good, and you
It
pull
does.
it and put tension on it, and
It'll stay, huh?
it does.
Yeah.
It does. And the boats are cut out so well that it almost falls together.
Wow, that's a great idea.
There's just a couple places where there's a lot of tension on the wood where it's doing curves and stuff that you need the wire to suck it in tight.
Yeah. Now, do you use copper wire, or what kind of wire is it?
It looks like an aluminum.
Is it silver? It's a
Yeah,
silver
silver.
color.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Something pretty light.
Yeah. You just drill like a 16th hole,
Mm-hmm.
and then pop them through and get some pliers.
Yeah.
Is that basically what yours was?
Yeah.
Just-
right.
mhm.
Yeah.
There's a little learning curve on getting the right tension. Snap the
Yeah,
wire.
it is. If you tighten too much,
You
you
remember
ding
that,
the wood.
Yeah.
And snap
I know,
the wire.
I did that a few times.
Just when you get it down, then you're done with the wiring.
Yeah, it's kind of a real art, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Any other things you've learned that for people listening that are building a boat that might be useful?
One thing we did notice that we're just kind of thinking in theory happens is some of those seams, when you put the epoxy in them to glue them, I believe it acts as like a lubricant. And the tape, even though when you looked at it, it was holding good, you come back in the morning and it slipped a little bit.
The tape did?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So I'm thinking, the seam slipped.
Seam.
Okay.
So I'm thinking some of it's because the epoxy acted as a lubricant, let it slide.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So if while you're putting it together, you see a spot and you line it up, and then you come back later and it's out again, he's got this technique where he uses thumbtacks to kind of go in the end grain, kind of through the seam, and that stops it from moving.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt to check back after it starts to set and do that.
So you're talking about seams inside the boat?
Between the planks.
Oh, between the planks.
panels,
Oh.
Yeah, when you're putting, because the deck's got 4 panels on each side. And so when one doesn't line up or something, you kind of stick a thumbtack through the end grain and kind of use it as a wedge against the other piece. And it
Oh, I see. It
really steady.
holds it in place.
Do more of those.
Because you're edge gluing the panels together first,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah, you do. You do the half of the boat.
Yeah.
And then you come in and you're using a syringe to put the glue in the seam. Just to kind of tack everything together before you do your finished glassing later. And that surprised us. We came back and we knew that the seams were tight when we left. And then come back in the morning and we got a little gap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that's a good
overlap or
hint.
something.
Things moved a little bit, huh?
I think that would be
Do
useful
more of those
for people.
is what we do in the next one.
Yeah.
If it's any chance that it's going to pop, just do it. It doesn't really put a mark in the boat. It does put a little dent in the top piece because you're going in the middle of the lower piece. But
Yeah.
It's pretty minor.
Sand some of that out, probably.
yeah,
Yeah. No big deal. Well, very good. For people listening that are thinking about taking a boat building class, what would you say to them?
well, beautiful day like this, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. What do you think, Cynthia? What would you tell people?
If you have the resources, definitely take a class. If you have very solid woodworking skills, maybe not needed. But for me, which I have limited woodworking skills and no fiberglass skills, I would have never completed something like this.
Yeah.
So I heartily recommend. And Seth, our instructor, and John, the owner, have just been fabulous to work with.
Cool. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, same thing. Those guys are great.
They are.
Like say,
Recommend it, huh?
Learning little shortcuts and stuff, saving you from,
Yeah.
doing a big mistake or something at home, or just being aggravated or something. Having guys standing behind you going, okay, this is how you do it.
Or this is looking good.
Yeah.
Keep going with that.
Yeah, it's
the
nice to have
encouragement.
it's nice to know when you are doing things right.
Yeah.
We look at each other and say, "Do you think that's right? What's your feeling? What's your gut feeling?" But really, we just have to ask Seth.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for doing the podcast interview today. I appreciate it. Best of luck to you in finishing your boat up.
All right.
All right.
We
Take
will
care.
finish it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, it is February 15th, 2013. I'm sitting with John Lockwood on a picnic bench at Point Hudson. It doesn't get any better than this, John.
That's pretty nice. You forgot to mention that we're in the sunshine.
Yeah,
which is rare
blue
around here.
skies. It's really nice out here. I guess people listening can't see the environment, but it's pretty spectacular.
They wouldn't believe you anyway if they knew anything about the Northwest.
Yeah, so John, you got a class going on in here. Tell me about the Pygmy class that's going to wrap up tomorrow.
Well, these are workshops where we help people who've bought Pygmy boat kits put them together. And we started 2 years ago, so this is I think it's our third season, and we have 5 classes scheduled for 2013, and they're all, I think there's still space in the November class, but all the rest of them were sold out and had waiting lists on them.
Wow.
And it's great. For people that are hesitant about their skills, or just, it's like a big step, or they just want the experience, and they within 1 week they get a boat that they can put, that's 3-dimensional and rigid, and that they can put on top of their car and drive home. And they still have some work to do at home, but the hard part is all done, and they've got all of the hull is all shaped beautifully, and it's glassed. The whole inside is glassed. So they've got all the skills, both in glassing and working with epoxy, to finish the outside of the boat when they get home. And then they glue on the cockpit combings and put in the bulkheads and hatches, and they're done.
Yeah, so how many people are taking this class, John? How many boats are being built anyway?
We do 6 at a
boats?
time. Yeah. And so far it's been kayaks, and it's been singles.
Oh.
But we've built almost all of our boats. So we've built Arctic Terns, Cohos, Ospreys, Pinguinos, and Merlets in the class. In this class we have 2 Ospreys, 2 Arctic Tern 17s, and 2 Pinguino 145s. So full-length touring boats to sweet, pretty high-performance recreational kayaks in this class.
Yeah, the Pinguino, that's a more recent design that's recreational, but a high-performance boat, too, type of thing.
Well, it's an interesting thing. These recreational boats have really taken off in the last 7 years, and I think it's what's driven by 2 things. One is that they have real large cockpits, and they're stable, and so they're easy to get into and out of. Older people who are, whose bodies have gotten cranky and they can't kind of.
Why are you looking at me when you say that,
I'm
John?
thinking about myself. I'm older than you by quite a bit. I can still get into a kayak, but it's nice being in a recreational kayak. But the lines on these boats are really they're really sweet, and most people are under the misconception that longer boats are faster. And that is totally true, and it is totally untrue. So there's two completely different physical principles that determine the speed of a boat. And the primary and most important one is the frictional drag on the hull. It's just literally like a bicycle or a car. It's overcoming friction.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely. And so until you reach your hull speed, and I'll come back to what that means, but until you reach your hull speed, it's all about frictional drag. And your hull speed is much faster than most people paddle. So standardly, people who are touring will paddle 3 to 4 miles an hour. If they're really fit, they'll sometimes tour long distances for pushing 5 miles an hour or more. But they're in boats that have a hull speed of 5.9 miles an hour, something like that, which is higher than they're going. And so hull speed is defined by when the boat, as you start paddling, your boat starts producing little ripples at the bow. And as you paddle harder, these ripples get longer and a little bigger, and as you paddle harder, they turn into real waves. I mean, they're real waves from the start. And they keep getting bigger. The harder you paddle, the bigger the wave, and the longer the wave that you produce. And when you really, really, really start powering a boat, you will produce a wave which is big enough so that it will kind of crest about, maybe 2.5 feet from the bow, and it'll drop into a trough somewhere about where your body is sitting in the boat in the middle, and the crest behind you will be the length of the boat. The stern of your boat will be up on the top of the crest, and the boat will be level, and the waveform will be equal to the length of the boat from crest to stern. And when you paddle harder than that, you produce a bigger wave that's even longer, and your stern starts to sink down into the trough. And you have this phenomenon called hull speed, where the harder you paddle, the bigger the wave, and the further down in the trough you fall. And your boat sort of squats down and literally goes into this huge hole. And for normal, larger displacement hulls, it's impossible really to go any faster than the hull speed. It's sometimes called the terminal hull speed, or it's a limiting speed. And that speed is determined by the length of your boat. It's a function of the square root of the length, because it occurs
length of the water
at
line?
the length of the boat, the length of the water line.
Yeah, okay.
But at cruising speeds, which are 4 miles an hour, it has nothing to do with
Interesting. I didn't know
this
that,
waveform. Nothing is too strong a word. It's like never say never.
Yeah.
Never say nothing. But the dominant factor is wetted surface, and these shorter boats have less wetted surface than the longer boats. So just imagine a rectangle, a platform that's 8 feet long by 2 feet wide, and you compute its wetted surface. And then you make it 16 feet long and still 2 feet wide. It has a lot more wetted surface sitting on the water. It may have a little teeny bit less sinkage, but it has way more wetted surface on the bottom. And that 16-foot platform, which is 2 feet wide, has a lot more frictional drag and is much slower. And if you point the two ends, the same thing is still the case. So it's true that in racing boats, and when you have people that are in a class race where all the boats can't be over a certain width and can't be longer than a certain amount, and the race is being won by people that can all push their boat to their hull speed and more, the length actually doesn't matter, because it's a class rank race. You can't do it any longer.
Yeah.
But if you're an unlimited race, like the Cross Sound race, that's 7.5 miles from Alki Beach to Bainbridge, in Seattle to Bainbridge Island, you can, the longer boats definitely will dominate if they've got a paddler in them that is strong enough to paddle them at their hull speed, the longer hull speed.
Interesting, yeah.
In the race that went from Chicago to New York City, the 1,000-mile canoe race that happened about 10 years ago, the man that won was in a 24-foot-long kayak that was, I think, 19 inches wide, 18 inches long.
Really?
Yeah. So these pinguinos, they've got really sweet lines, and they have very efficient hulls, and their wetted surface is less than a 17.5-foot coho. or a 17-foot Arctic Tern. And they paddle beautifully at cruising speeds. They don't really take any more effort. In fact, they might take a little bit less. It's effort to paddle at 4 miles an hour than a full-on sea touring boat. And so these two things, this is what it's all about. That's why these boats have become really popular. A lot of the plastic boats that are sold as wreck boats are like 9, 10, 11 feet long. And those are so short that you can't paddle them at the standard cruising speeds that most kayak clubs would go paddling, day paddling.
Yeah.
But once you get into the 14-foot range, they have a long enough waterline to cruise along at 3.5, 4 miles an hour. And then the people that are paddling those 14-foot boats actually have a speed advantage, or if you will, a efficiency advantage on the 17, 18-foot touring boats that they're paddling with.
So the wetted surface would vary depending upon the weight of the paddler too, right, John?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's still a case that if you take that same weight paddler and you put him in a 17-foot boat, it's going to have more wetted surface. If it's the same, so if you take two boats that are the same design, so our Arctic Tern 14 is the same width and the same design as the Arctic Tern 17, and it has about 16% less wetted surface.
Wow.
And you can notice it. It may not be 16% easier to paddle, but it's close to it. It's probably 13, 14%. I don't know. There's some subtleties with the waveform that are relatively less significant than the wetted surface that will affect it. But in general, wetted surface is what it's all about at cruising speeds.
Mm-hmm. So in general, a longer boat is going to track straighter? Is that an overgeneralization?
It's a gross overgeneralization, which is true. So I guess, I don't know, and that's a little dicey. If you took a boat that had a lot of rocker in it, so that, and let's say it was,
more rocker.
15 feet long, and it had a lot of curvature in the bottom, so it would spin like a top.
Yeah.
And was quite maneuverable. And you expanded that to 17 feet, so it was longer, and you left the keel line the same, so and you sat at the same time size person in it. The ends of the keel lines at both ends might be out of the water.
Yeah.
So you'd be perhaps on the same waterline length in the boat, and you wouldn't have gained anything in terms of tracking.
Yeah.
So, but if you're in a longer boat, which actually sinks to a waterline which is longer, I would, so long as they're similar shaped keels, a longer boat would track more.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be the same. I mean, the difference between a boat which tracks really well and one that doesn't is actually the shape of the keel line, as opposed to it's both.
Yeah.
It's the shape of the keel line and its length.
Yeah. So are you working on some new designs now, John?
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah. Always.
Anything you can talk about?
Wow. It is dangerous. Because I get these phone calls from everybody that's all excited about these boats, and they want them now.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't. I'll tell you that I gosh, what shall I say? This really is a problem. I've told people that I'm working on a boat, and I get phone calls from them, once a week for 8 months, and then they can't figure out what happened to that boat anyway. But we have gone through two prototypes on a new design, and I think it actually may go through a third. It's another performance kayak, and I'll tell you about it when it comes out.
Okay. Sounds fair. So what's the name of your latest model? Did you build one named after Freya?
That's No, the latest model is the Merlet.
Oh, okay, the Merlet. All right. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. And so, what's the? Tell me about the Merlet. That's the one with all the different deck designs.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. This is the first time we've done this, and I don't know if anybody. Well, so people have started. We came out with an Arctic Tern 14 and an Arctic Tern 17 that were essentially the same hull shape that came in different lengths, and and this was a long time ago, and by 6 or 7 years ago, this was common. A lot of the fiberglass manufacturers were coming out with a design that came in a variety of lengths and a variety of widths, and we've taken that. We've taken that one step further in that the Merlet comes. So in one length of the Merlet, which is 17 feet long, there's two hull designs. One of them is a strong tracking boat, and the other one is quite maneuverable. And there's 4 deck designs.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's the Merlet SDC, which is called swept down deck, and it has a. So the other thing that's happened is that Pygmy came out with boats that had a 4 panels in the deck, so that there was a deck chine, if you will.
Oh.
And about 6 or 7 years after we did that, they started showing up in fiberglass boats, and there's now like 5 or 6 fiberglass manufacturers that actually have chine decks. And even before they went there, Mike Necker started producing boats, the Lushka, that had multi-chine boats, and they were actually built as multi-chine stitch and glue boats, modeled loosely after ours. In other words, the construction process. Mm-hmm. He actually approached me and asked me if I would do the computer and development work for new designs of his, because he thought the construction and prototype cycle would be a lot faster if you produced it out of stitch and glue. Mm-hmm. And I was way too busy with new designs of my own. It was just totally kind of underwater.
Yeah.
And so I didn't take him up on it. But he about a year and a half later, he came out with a Lushka, and to my mind, you can clearly see the chines in the hull. It's a 2-chine boat. It has 3 panels, and towards the ends, the chines have been kind of ground out, faired out, so the ends of the boat are sort of smooth, and there's a concavity in the front that kind of fares into the start of these chines that go the whole rest of the length of the boat. But the SDC has a deck chine which starts out and in the bow fairly high and then swoops down to and goes past the cockpit at a lower angle, and then goes along the rear deck at a lower height. So you have kind of more foot room up front and a little more knee room and space in the front of the boat, and then you have a lower rear cockpit and a lower rear deck. And then we have the Merlet 4PD, which has the deck chine is substantially higher and has substantially more knee room than the SDC and then there's a transition where it sweeps down next to the cockpit almost to the shear line. It's like half an inch from the shear line. And then it connects to a panel behind it that produces our standard 4-panel rear deck. And there's a patented transition that we've had since, I think it's 2001, that cuts into the rear deck that will lower the rear cockpit height. And so you get a lot of knee room and a very low rear cockpit height for doing Greenland rolls. Mm-hmm. And then there's another version of this thing which has a flat panel in the back. So it cuts all the way down to the shear line, and then there's a flat panel in the back. And the rear of the cockpit height is only, I think, about 3/8 of an inch lower than the 4PD. But the 1PD, the one panel, so it's 4-panel rear deck, 1-panel rear deck, and there's a 2-panel rear deck as well. Mm-hmm. And they have a slightly lower rear cockpit height, but then a lower rear deck. And some of the Greenland lowers like a really completely flat rear deck. It changes. So on the 4-panel deck, you can lay back with your life vest flat on the rear deck, but your body will be at a slight angle. I actually don't know exactly. If I was to guess, I'd say it's about an 8-degree angle. And it might be more. It could be 12. But it's very low. But with a flat panel deck, you can lay your life vest down horizontal to the rear deck, absolutely flat.
Wow.
And it doesn't seem to, we've been testing these things a lot. It doesn't seem to make any. My daughter, who's become an expert roller at this point, and it may make a difference if you're doing a straitjacket roll or an elbow roll, where you're doing these extremely difficult rolls where you're sweeping your body around on the surface of the water, and as the boat rotates up, you sort of just sweep it right up onto the rear deck. And with the flat panel rear deck, you have to lift your body just slightly less than on the 4-panel rear deck. And it actually can make a difference in a competition setting. These rolls are extremely hard to do. and really nobody would dream of doing them unless you were in competition, I don't think. Yeah. But the 4-panel rear deck is really our best seller in the Millet, and it gives you it gives you more knee height with a closer paddle stroke. The way the side deck panels are cut away, and it gives you a very low rear cockpit height. It's actually lower than most of the British boats on the market. So it's lower than the Romani. It's lower than the Anisakuda. It's a very low rear cockpit height, but it gives you enough room in the rear deck to actually carry camping gear. And to take it touring. So it was really a boat that was designed for advanced people who were advanced paddlers who were touring, doing distance touring.
What kind of boat are you paddling now, John?
I'm actually paddling. I've totally fallen in love with the Merlet 4PD version 1. So my favorite boat is this the Merlet that has a 4-panel rear deck where you can carry camping gear and go take touring, but has a very low rear cockpit height that's very easy to roll. That's a stronger tracking hull. I really like boats that just go where they're pointed and are just effortless and thoughtless.
Without a rudder.
All of our boats are designed to not use rudders.
Yeah.
So the more maneuverable one that paddles, it handles really well without a rudder yet. But it's moved around a little bit more by following seas and waves will broach a boat and move it about. It requires a little bit more of attention to paddle without a rudder, not much. But
are you using a Greenland paddle, John?
I have. I've become a convert. Totally.
Really?
Yeah. There's a whole group of geezers in Port Townsend. So this has been my experience with Greenland paddlers. I find I had gotten to the point where I'm 70 now, and I paddle with a local club here that they range in age from about 46 to maybe 70, and I couldn't keep up with those guys. I could for short periods of time, but they started leaving me behind. And when I designed the Merlet and started paddling it, and when I switched to the Greenland paddler, they could not leave me behind. It was literally physically impossible.
Really?
So this comes back to what we were already talking about, because I can paddle that boat to its hull speed and keep it there for like 35, 40 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And back to Greenland paddle. So, and with a Greenland paddle, I can keep up with these younger guys and be at the head of the pack and do it for 40 minutes. And I can come home, I feel fine.
Are they
and if I do it with a Euro paddle,
yeah,
I can first of all only do it for about 15 minutes, and then I'm just exhausted. And when I get home, my back is sore, my arms hurt, my body is stiff. I'm just like wasted.
Yeah.
And it's a long story, and everybody, the physics of Greenland paddles, there's a lot of debate about them, but my experience has been that the young paddlers who are real strong, they can't tell the difference between the paddles. They really don't care. But you get old guys like me that have limitations.
Yeah.
And they know right away. They can really, really tell that there's less fatigue on their body to be paddling a Greenland paddle. And I think it is the case that in certain situations you have more power out of a Euro paddle that you might need in a situation where you're being capsized or you're executing rolls in dynamic water like surf. But there's a debate about that as well, because there's some very experienced paddlers that have paddled Skookumchuck tidal rapids and a lot of really nasty shore break and stuff with Greenland paddles.
You paddle at a higher cadence?
You do paddle at a higher cadence.
Yeah.
And we should probably save my rap about why Greenland paddles work for another time.
All right, we'll do that. So let's wrap it up here, John. So people interested in a Pygmy class, what should they do?
They can look on our website and check it out, and they can, I think they can sign up for it on the website. Okay. But they're absolutely welcome to call us at any time and ask us questions
What's
about it.
What's your phone number?
Area code 360-385-6143.
And the website, John?
It's pygmyboats.com.
Okay. PYGMYBOATS.com. Okay, very good. Thanks for your time, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. All right.
Pleasure.
Thank you to Tom and Christina and to John Lockwood. Really appreciate it. It was great talking to you guys and had a lot of fun. And it was really fun to see your Pygmy class also, so keep up the good work. Well, if you'd like to connect with me, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, or Pinterest. If you look for Wooden Boat Dan there, you'll find me. You can send an email to dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can leave a voice message for me by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/voicemail. And then you can leave a message from me directly from your computer or your smartphone. You can also connect with me on my blog, hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can write comments at the end of each show notes post for the week. And just a reminder that I do post pictures and write notes each Thursday that go along with the audio podcast, so check that out if you haven't. Also be aware that on the website, if you go to the index page on my website, there's a list there. It's actually a table of all the episodes I've published and who the episodes are with and what the topic is. So it's a quick way to get around on the website to the episode you want to listen to or read about or see photos of. So check that out, hookedonwoodenboats.com/index. Also wanted to clarify comments I made in the introduction about going to wooden boat festivals and schools and local builders and so on. I mainly talked about the United States, but I don't want to be exclusive to the U.S. because I know there's builders all over the world and schools and stuff going on all over the place. So wherever you live, if you're in Europe or Africa or Australia or Russia or wherever it is, check out what's happening with your local area, and there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to find something. And if you do, let me know about it. I'd love to hear about what's happening overseas also. If you'd like to support the podcast, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/Amazon and make any purchase of any item on Amazon and get paid a small commission. Or you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/JD. That stands for Jamestown Distributors. And that link will take you to their website. And if you make a purchase, I get paid a little bit there too. It helps defray the costs of me driving around and having some equipment and spending some time doing this. So thank you for your support there. Well, I hope you have a great week. Get in the wooden boat game somehow, some way. Let me know about it. And we'll talk again next week. This is Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. And God bless until we meet again next week. Take care.